From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, August the 19th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now, here they are, live in person and still breathing on their own, Jim and Rich.
After a false start on the engineer, 5-yard penalty, forgot to plug in the amplifier.
I think we should get a cut of Ravishing Rick Rude at the end of our music saying, "Cut the music."
I think we should actually find one of who was the one that used to yell "Stop the music" during his bit? Jimmy Durante at some point. When there'd be some
Jimmy Durante. Okay,
find Durante yelling,
yeah.
"Stop the music!"
Stop the music.
I think that would
Inca Dinka Doo, his autobiography.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
No. Man, we're taking a walk down memory lane already.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, I don't know.
Got what did you already jettison the paper? You didn't see much in there in the way of
we'll get to that.
What you want to talk about?
We had our show prep last night, or what we laughingly call show prep. You know, you called me up and go, "Oh, I just remembered we got a show tomorrow."
That's right, we got a show. So we got a show at the show.
What do you want to talk about? I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
I think the one topic that you brought up, and there are a couple other things we can kind of get into today, but one topic you brought up was the ongoing saga of Patrick Kane, and how everyone is seemingly rushing to judgment.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty typical thing these days, Jim. But yeah, most everybody is guilty before they're even proven. They have no time to prove themselves innocent before they're proven, before they're found guilty in the public domain.
Yeah, and I think some of the, other things you've got people, chiming in on things where they really have no idea what's going on.
Well, at this point, I don't think anybody actually knows what's going on. Is it been actually even established that it was Patrick Kane in his house there in the Buffalo suburbs, and supposedly 2 women? I don't even know if that has actually been substantiated.
Well,
I mean, that's what's been talked about.
That's what's been talked about, and You've had the nightclub operator chime in. You've had the guy who chauffeured Kane around.
Right. Yeah.
Who's a part-time, actually not a part-time. He was an off-duty Buffalo cop.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yesterday, now you got the lawyer chiming in on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
The lawyer for Patrick Kane has left Facebook comments defending the Blackhawk star against rape allegations and urging everyone not to rush to a decision, according to Deadspin, which obtained screenshots of the online back and forth. Paul Cambria has generally responded with no comment when asked about the rape investigation surrounding Kane that stems from a woman accusing him of sexual assault in the early morning hours of August 2nd at his suburban Buffalo home after they met at a bar. On Facebook, though, Cambria has engaged others after blogger Alan Bedenko posted an article regarding Kane's driver that night, Thomas English, who's also a police officer who was off duty at the time, and how he would have been better served not talking to the media. Among his complaints, Cambria appears to have taken issue with friends of the accuser commenting to the media while remaining anonymous, and there's been a lot of that, too. If someone wants to make a statement, why not identify yourself, Cambria wrote. Well, anyway, I said, keep an open mind. Cambria also indicated that Mark Croce, owner of the bar that Kane was at that night, had nothing to gain by defending the star player. Kane had been scheduled to take the Stanley Cup to Croce's bar, but that appearance was canceled after the allegations surfaced. Croce largely defended Kane to the Buffalo News shortly after the story broke, saying a young woman was hanging all over Kane that night. It's not clear if that was even the same woman who was the accuser. Kane has Croce has nothing to do with nothing to gain. He's too big for that petty stuff, Cambria wrote on Facebook. Cambria urged everyone to withhold judgment. Don't prejudge either side. Cambria wrote, only the people there know the real skinny. Time will tell.
My feeling, Jim, and I think I said this to you yesterday, if there was actually some proof that he had done anything illegal, I think that would probably come to light pretty quickly. But the fact that this has taken, what is this, 2 weeks now?
2 weeks now. That
I
wonder what's going on.
I'm thinking that the whole thing is pretty murky. Put it this way, he may have gone home and brought a couple people with him, but I think it's questionable that anything even happened.
Yeah. By the way, that article came from, it was on chicago.cbslocal.com.
Now, what do you think about the scolds in the media, though? I mean, here are some people who are, boy, I'll tell you, they are paragons of virtue, and they're all over. Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Hasn't he learned his lesson yet?
There's saints.
My goodness.
I do say, there's two things, right or wrong, about this, and I'm not going to make any comment about that. Patrick Kane has through his professional career has had a reputation for drinking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Kane, through his professional career, has had a reputation for getting himself in stupid situations. Yeah, and that's the only thing that can be said here.
Yeah, well, I would say this. I always think
performance.
You're talking about a guy who's 25 or 26 years old, has a ton of money, and obviously with that high profile and all that money, you're going to have women around. You're going to go out and have a good time, like most young guys do. And let's put it this way: could you be more thoughtful? Could you think a little bit more before you do something? Yeah, you could, but I think that's really easily said, and I don't know that it's easily done.
Right.
I mean, if you and I or anybody was in that situation, would we be any better?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So, is Patrick Kane had appeared in the news for non-hockey related things? Definitely, but I don't find it to be that off-putting. I mean, you would think that this guy was an axe murderer, the way that it gets played.
I would ask you, and I thought about this today. Let's just change the scenario. Pac-Man Jones plays hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Plays for the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Lives in Buffalo, New York.
Uh-huh.
What if the situation would involve Pac-Man Jones? What would the press be saying? Past reputation. He's guilty.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, really, and in this country, at least the way I understand this country was supposed to be, your past record is not supposed to influence what's going on in your life today.
Right.
So, whatever, I don't care who you name, whatever they've done in the past. Yeah, does it give you a hint that maybe something was going on? Possibly, but that doesn't mean you did it.
That doesn't necessarily mean you did it. That's true, and you're going by past performance, and as they always put in the quotes, that's always as part of the standard disclaimer on any prospectus for any securities. Past performance does not guarantee future results.
Well, I tell you, you know what's really interesting, Jim. I'm thinking as we're talking about this, Tony Accardo, I think never spent a day in jail. He might have spent one night one time.
Yeah.
But, obviously his sins didn't follow him legally. But you know what? You get some young guys who play professional sports and they're high profile and they do some things that young guys do. And boy, oh boy, I tell you what, they're ready for the slammer. What's up, John?
Well, I've been following this whole thing since it was first announced. First of all, the news media makes a mountain out of a molehill, regardless what it is. Now, here is a famous person. He's known throughout the whole United States as one of the best hockey players in the league. And of course, they're going to thrive on it. This is the big thing right now, is what Patrick Kane. And just like his lawyer says, they're making, don't accuse him of doing something until he is proven guilty.
Yeah.
Now, it's been about, what'd you say, Jim, about 2 weeks now since this has been going on?
Right.
Now, to me, and we were talking about this over the weekend up in Wisconsin with our friends, we think that Patrick Kane is being set up.
Oh, that's possible.
Very possible.
Yeah.
These women that was 26 years old, yes, you're going to go out and have a good time.
Right.
I mean, yes, he has been accused of drinking and that kind of stuff. I mean, he was arrested once before for some kind of bad behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, the news media, as soon as they get something on a famous person, man, this is all they throw.
You said a very telling point. That, they make a mountain out of a molehill. I remember a great quote, and now, with the fact that there is so much time to fill with how many different sports channels, and that you have a famous quote back in the 30s from a great radio humorist, Fred Allen.
Right.
He said that NBC has so many vice presidents that every morning, NBC or CBS, I can't remember what he was on, NBC, I think.
Both of them.
Yeah, but both of them. He said NBC has so many vice presidents that every morning at 9 o'clock when they come in, they're given a molehill, and by 5 o'clock they're required to make a mountain out of it.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
I'd say this too, Patrick Kane. Now the bad behavior that Patrick Kane was involved with prior to this, he had an incident with a cab driver.
Yeah.
Now here's what I would say: if it's first off, it's not that hard to get into an incident with a cab driver. Number one. The second thing is, if you and I had the same incident with the cab driver, you know what? There would obviously there would be no media coverage of it, but because you're Patrick Kane or whoever, they're automatically, this is, oh my God, it's a criminal thing. The other thing I always enjoy is the double standard of the media, because the other incident that I remember that Kane had was when they were taking pictures in the limo. He was in the limo with some people, and they were drinking. But here again, the scolds in the media made a big thing of this. But you know what? Could you imagine the huge thing they would have made if Patrick Kane had decided, instead of being in a limo drinking, where he wasn't driving, had he decided to be a driver that night? Then that would have, and he'd been stopped. Oh my God, that would even be worse.
That would have been worse.
So, I mean, here's a guy, at least, okay, maybe you shouldn't have been taking pictures because, you are a high-profile guy. But at least you went out with your friends, you drank, and you didn't drive. So nobody gave him credit for that. I mean, they all barked about the pictures that were taken, and the pictures were basically nothing anyway. It was like half a dozen young people having a goofy good time in a limo. So, what's the big deal?
You know what would stop a lot of this nonsense with the news media? If somebody would criticize the news media. But there's nobody out there to criticize the news media. The news media is God.
That's true, John.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
true.
if somebody was to get out there like Ronald Trump or Don Trump, this guy here, if he get out there and start knocking down the news media, you see how fast that some of the stuff would come to an end.
No, it's going to continue. I mean, you go through the whole deal with Trump. Well, I mean, obviously the whole thing with Megyn Kelly died down, and she responded, and but. Trump will be Trump and will continue, but we're not going to talk politics today.
No, but I'm just saying.
No, John's talking about the news media in general.
John's talking a valid point, the media in general.
That's right.
I mean, I love to listen to the afternoon of the afternoon show on The Score, especially when Terry Boers will start if they'll talk about some sports writer who's been around forever. If Boers doesn't like them, his response is, and John dialed the phone right away, he's nothing more than an asshat.
You mean there's other radio stations other than WRHS?
There is, yes.
there is.
His response will be, he's still an ass clown.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Wait, John, could you cut? You know what? Cut this guy's mic off, will you? He's doing it again. This is 2 weeks in a row. And I'm supposed to be the bad guy.
It's very upsetting when you hear them how they keep. Look at what Jay Cutler. He did something too, and they just thrived on that and thrived on it a couple of years ago, wasn't it, Jim? That he did something. He was involved in some kind of a situation.
The whole thing with the when he was hurt in the playoff game against the Packers. I think that's what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been.
It might have been. There
was another. Can you imagine? I think I've said this on this show before, but can you imagine being Jay Cutler's parents? Here's some people who were really proud. Their son was a really good football player in high school. Goes on to a very prestigious school, really, Vanderbilt. Excellent school. Yeah. Plays football there, becomes a professional player.
Yeah.
And this guy, you don't hear anything. I mean, the best that this guy can hope for is sort of a neutral look at what he does. Most everything else is negative. And you know what? Actually, when you really take a look at Jay Cutler, what is the big deal? Okay, he's not like an elite quarterback.
He's
a good quarterback.
He's an average quarterback.
And
but
what is the big deal?
If somebody ever developed a WAR statistic for football, wins above replacement, I bet you Jay Cutler would be right around that 0 to 0.5 range.
Well, I guess my whole point would be, here's a guy who really, when you look at it, hasn't gotten in any trouble off the field.
No.
He's I think he tries his best. I've seen the man take a beating on the field and come back and play and still try his best. Yeah, he gets nothing but negative press. Could you imagine his parents? Like, what does my son have to do to please these people?
Think about that game against the Giants a few years ago when he got sacked 9 times.
Yeah, I mean, he took a beating there.
He took an absolute beating. And I guess the one thing I can say about Cutler, he's never going to be an elite quarterback. But I think I would have to admire the attitude, because the attitude is always, here I am.
Yeah.
Take me as I am.
You have to have a very thick skin to take the criticism that he takes and perform at any type of a high level. And I think he does a pretty good job with that.
Yeah.
So but anyway, we weren't meaning to get on that subject. No. I don't know how we got. Oh, John had mentioned it.
No, but it actually kind of brings up another thing to me too. And I was listening coming in, and they kind of got on listening to the score, and they were kind of getting into talking about players where you might have had an unrealistic sports love for them.
Unrealistic sports love.
Yeah. Jay Cutler being an example. One guy said, he said, when you're 7 years old and the catcher on your favorite team hits 30 home runs.
Yeah.
Rick Wilkins.
He
said, I followed Rick Wilkins' career all the way through. He said, and there were some other guys who always, there's other people chimed in about players who maybe never achieved what they thought they were. I mean, Penny Hardaway was a name that was mentioned. Because he had a great start to his career, then injuries took over, and,
Well, Jim, I think the type of thing that you're angling at here, or what they were angling at, is something that starts to happen to guys and women now, because women obviously are involved in sports, when they're high school age, and maybe even sometimes before. You'll get I could think a guy that we both know, we don't know him well, but Ronnie Monaco, who when he was in Little League playing football was like a superstar.
Yeah.
And you know what? A very fine high school football player, but never produced the way he did in high school. So you start to get those expectations, and not everybody, obviously not everybody's built the same, and not everybody, some people just say, okay, I like doing this, but it's just not that important to me. So yes, am I still going to play? But you know what? Other people will really take it to the next level and work and really maybe be stars at the high school level or the pro level or the college. And others just say, hey, I like playing the game.
This is it.
This
It's
is
fun.
it. It's
That's
fun,
as far
and
as it
that's
goes.
And, you know,
But the point that these guys were talking about were people that you watched for one reason or another and thought, this is my guy. And they've never been big stars, but you just liked something about the way
yeah,
they
they still
played.
can be your guy. No doubt about it.
Just something about the way they played.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
well, you know,
I always, and he always got such a bad rap in Chicago, but when I was a kid, I really liked watching Jim Pappin.
Jim Pappin. Okay, sure.
He always got booed because everybody thought he was lazy out there,
Yeah.
the way he played. But, boy, I thought he was good.
Well, I have to go. I like most of these guys, the guys who've played here and the guys who played in other cities, and throw the women athletes in there as well.
Sure.
What I would say is that when you watch sports, you're watching the best of life because, you know, I'm watching the exhibition game last week. I saw the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy there was a small article in the paper. I'm not going to be able to think of this guy's name. He's a defensive back. He's on the Bears 90-man roster. He's not going to make the team. And he actually appeared in the game last Thursday night. I got a chance to watch him a little bit. And I'm not an expert, but you could tell this young guy is not going to make the team. But, you know, just the idea that 90 guys go to camp, 53 will make the team, so 37 are not. But just the effort they put in to have that chance to to compete for that spot is very it's very uplifting.
The dream,
when you think about it.
The dream is very tough to let go of.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly saw the evidence of that all the years I was around semi-pro football.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
God bless those guys.
those guys were paying to play.
Yeah.
Some of them had dreams that they would go on to something. There was a guy on the Thunder, I think, one year got invited to training camp with Carolina. And Frank Trenadu played arena ball
Yeah.
for many years.
Sure.
I think Guy Narduli played in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I saw a thing, Jim, in last week's neighborhood paper where Tommy Lentine, who's the AD and a friend of ours, AD at Montini,
Right.
and they just hired a new head basketball coach who was Daryl Thomas, who was outstanding player at St. Joseph's.
St. Joe's and played in Indiana.
And then the article went on to say he played, I think, 1 year in the pros, I mean the American pros, and then played 14 years, I believe, in Europe. So I'm thinking most people, like who sit behind mics like we do at the big stations, you're sort of going to poo-poo that. But you know what? In reality, if you could play 14 years in any pro league, that's outstanding.
At any level, and the competition level
right,
is pretty strong.
Oh, it's very strong. I mean, it's
you think about the number of players that go over from here to play, and think about the players that have developed over there.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know what? There's a lot of guys who were, say, big stars at some level here, high school or college,
right,
who, whatever, they might be too small, they might be a step slow, they might be not quite, they might be tweeners in terms of height, who are still very good players that end up over in Europe or over in Israel or over
China,
China or whatever.
Too,
and doesn't mean they're bad players. They just, the pro level, you're talking about I don't know how many teams, but you're talking about let's say 300, just off the top of my head, 300 and some guys who are NBA level players, and that's it.
That's it, right?
It's right. And there's a lot more basketball players than there are jobs.
Right. And you've got these guys that are playing in the developmental leagues in the hope that they can struggle. I don't know, or is there still the old ABA, or
I don't know
if there's any other minor leagues. I don't even know if there's any other minor leagues. But guys have had long, productive careers over there. Dallas Comegys played a lot of years over there. Dallas was a big big star for DePaul in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Lamone Lampley was never a big star, but had a good career over there.
Sure.
And Lamone is working for DePaul in some developmental office capacity, fundraising and that type of thing. I always remembered after games, after he graduated, we'd sometimes run into his granddad over there, and the question was always, "How's Moan doing?"
Yeah.
He says he's doing good. He says he's playing over in France, and his big complaint is he can't find a good cheeseburger over there.
Yeah, well, we had a guy that graduated from Ridgewood, Bobby Mann, who was a very good player, and I think Bobby ended up playing at. I think Bobby might have played at Northern, and then his dad, Jerry Mann, who had been a very good player when he was a younger guy, was telling me that Bobby actually went over. He played professionally in Belgium. And the deal was that he would teach English to. He was working for a company, so the company was an international company. So he would teach English to these people during the day, and he'd play professional basketball in the evening. And there's a lot of interesting scenarios out there, and there are a lot of very fine players who, again, they're not at the level of, say, in this case, we're talking basketball, of NBA players, but they're still good enough to be pros somewhere. So it's just an interesting thing. But we have all the best of it, Jim. What we talk about is really, in my opinion, the best of that life could offer, because you're talking about guys who play sports, men and women who play sports. There's three things. They learn not to quit. They learn that to play. And do things that benefit the team, and they work hard at what they do. And those are three very uplifting
three very important
thoughts.
Three very important points.
Yep. So
and it starts at the level and prior to where the station is.
Yeah,
on a high school.
Definitely.
It should start with the Little League programs and start with that. By the way, did you see something about a Little League softball tournament in Iowa where a team was eliminated because they threw the game, so they wouldn't have to. Apparently, it was a double elimination tournament. They threw the game so they wouldn't have to face this other stronger team.
Okay. Now they threw. Actually, when you say they threw the game, they just didn't. They played their best players, but they didn't start.
They didn't start their best players. They were taking like every pitch, and when it came down to was either have to hit something or be called for strike three, they bunted.
Okay.
So, and it was very obvious that they were just trying to avoid playing this next team.
Yeah, that happens. But you know what? I don't think that's maybe not to the extent that you're talking about. But I think that's when especially if you're in a situation where it's a double elimination.
Yeah.
The people who are running the teams are looking at what's going to be down the line. And the only bad thing about that, Jim, is depending on how many teams are in the tournament, if you deliberately or not deliberately get in the loser's bracket, you realize in a double elimination tournament, when you get to the final day, depending on where you lose or at what point you lose, how many games you have to play to win that thing. I mean, and the other thing is, the thinking is off in a lot of ways, because say that team you're trying to avoid, now if say you're the winner of the losers bracket championship, now you've got to beat that same team not once but twice in order to do anything. So the thinking really doesn't make much sense to me.
No, it doesn't. Based on that, it really doesn't. Let's see. What do we? All right, let's take a break. We can start on something else.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, August the 19th, the year of our Lord, 2015, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norridge, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich.
And God bless John DeVita.
Thank you there, Doctor of the Dials. We didn't have any more false starts as we get into the second half now.
I see you have your, is that your sporting news?
Yeah,
open
it was interesting. It was interesting because last night I was just going through Time magazine, and in the obituary section they had something about Frank Gifford.
Oh yeah, you know what?
And I had and I thought it was good because there was a great line in there. You know, as Frank went on in years, and his and his presence kind of faded after he left the air on a regular basis and no longer played football.
Mm-hmm.
He went into one restaurant in New York and didn't get his usual table.
Oh.
And he joked about it.
Yeah.
He said, "I remember when I used to be me."
Yeah. You know what? Frank Gifford, when you texted me about Frank Gifford dying, and then I read some of the material in his obituary, I'll tell you, what a very accomplished life that man
He
led.
really did.
Yeah.
He really did. He was the guy that really kind of paved the way for athletes to get into the media.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. You know what's interesting?
He
Jim?
was. You did ask me if he was a quarterback in college. He was an All-American. He played in the single wing. He was the tailback.
Tailback. So it was similar to being a quarterback.
Similar to being a quarterback.
I was going to say, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that would have been a highlight and a low light in his career was when he was knocked unconscious by Chuck Bednarik in
1960.
1960.
Mm-hmm.
And sat out a year, I believe.
Yeah.
Interesting that, you know, all of the other things that we know him for were terms of talking, so you have to have your memory and your speech has to be good. But that one blow to the head, and I'm not saying that those, you know, obviously there is an effect, but that particular thing did not affect him long term, as it does some guys.
It was interesting because I think I have read that people say if you look at the hit, what really took Gifford out was not the hit but the landing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Of course, then again, you had Bednarik standing over him like, I think I killed him.
Yeah.
You know. But they said that really if you looked at it, it was not the hit, it was hit in the landing because that turf was frozen and you could see that head just bounce.
Well, I mean, either way. I mean, his head took a jolt.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's amazing that, as you said, he did as well as he did in a career because you have to keep your wits about you. You have to, you know, you have to keep the memory going, and you can't have everybody telling you everything in the ear,
right,
in your ear. But, you know, I had forgotten, of course. I don't think I saw. No, I did not see that game that day. I happened to be working at Weebolt's. He was in the booth with Ray Scott and Jack Buck on the Ice Bowl game with the Cowboys and Packers.
Yeah,
and it, he got off a good line, underscoring the 15-degree below zero cold by saying, "Excuse me, I have to take a bite of my coffee."
Yeah, I didn't know. I probably have heard that he was the guy who said that, but yeah, that was a good line. Thank you, Jen.
And I did not realize either that he did the play-by-play along with Bill Russell of that notorious 1972 gold medal basketball game.
With Bill Russell.
With Bill Russell.
Boy, you know what? That game, Jim. I remember an old classmate of ours, Pat Kelly's. I was at Pat's house, and we were watching that game, and all I could say, the worst example of, put it this way, maybe one of the worst things I've ever seen in sports in my life is what happened in that game. It brings tears to my eye just to think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a total miscarriage of justice, if you want to put it that way.
Sure.
Unbelievable the way that game was stolen from those. And kids, that played for the U.S. team.
Doug Collins was one of those
Doug
kids.
Collins, I think Spencer Haywood might have been on
Haywood,
the team.
I think, was on that team. Right?
And the way that game was stolen was that was criminal. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. Whatever you were going to say.
I was going to say, when we thinking about Frank Gifford, made me think that, and you just brought this up, and my mind starts to go into other directions. But what a great group that the New York Giants, had from probably the mid-'50s to the mid-'60s. Outstanding team, but never won more than one NFL championship,
And
even though they went to the championship game.
That's right.
I want to say at least 4 times, maybe more. But
56
they won.
56 they beat the Bears. They
Right.
just clobbered the Bears. That was the infamous game where
The second Jim Shoes game.
The Jim Shoes game.
Yeah.
61 they lost to the Packers.
Yeah. 62 they lost to the Packers.
60, in fact, both of the times
Well,
they
they
pretty
lost
much
to the
and
they
then
lost to the
the
Colts
Bears.
in 58 and 59.
They lost to the Colts in 58 and 59. They
Yeah.
lost to the Bears in 63.
Right. Yeah, so they lost 5 times championship. Won 1, lost 5. But it begs the question. I heard somebody talking about, or Marv Levy making the comment. You know what? I'd rather have been to the Super Bowl 4 times and lost than not been there at all. And those
And that's a great
it's a
great way to look at it.
Excellent point. I mean, if you're good enough to get to the dance, you're very good.
You got to the dance. That's right. Because the comments in here. Let's see. 1956, the Giants' first championship season in 18 years. Gifford was the NFL MVP after leading the league with 51 receptions and 1,422 yards from scrimmage. While finishing third with 5.2 yards per carry and fifth with 819 rushing yards. 5 times in the next 7 years, the Giants would play and lose in the NFL title game. 5 times.
5 times in 7 years.
7 years, right?
Yeah, because 60 was
63.
the Eagles year. And,
the Eagles was
7 would have been the Lions.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that. So they were, and I'm sure that, put it this way, I think when the year the Eagles won, the Giants were probably right there next. I mean, they probably
I would sure.
second.
Yeah, they probably did. And you talked about the players that were in that era. You had Charlie Connerly, you had Y.A. Tittle, you had Kyle Rote, very underrated ball player.
Yeah,
Kyle Rote. Sam Huff.
Sam Huff. You had
Rosie Greer
and Jim Cabbage, Andy Robustelli, Cliff Livingston. You get and the offensive line, Ray Waiteka, who was a very good center.
Yeah.
And I think there was one other receiver. You know what though? As they moved on further into that era, some of the parts changed. But no, they had a very strong team, very, very strong.
If you want to,
they had Dick Modulewski.
Yeah, if you want a great read, read the book Gifford wrote about the 58. The 58 championship game, and actually the season.
I did read that.
That is a great read.
You know what I love, it's a time that I shouldn't say we'll never go back to it, because if the whole TV media boom busts at some point, and most of these balloons busts at some point, but I remember, I think it was that book, because there's been a couple books written about that game, the sudden death overtime game and those teams. But I remember, I think it was Sam Huff that said, after the game was over, because they, now not many people are going to remember, but they had beaten the Giants, had beaten the Browns the last game of the season, so they were tied for first with the Browns. There was a 1-game playoff the next week against the Browns, which they won. So the Colts now had a week off, so they had 2 weeks in between games. The Giants had played consecutively, and the 2 previous games with the Browns had been big contests. I mean, they had to win both of those games just to survive. So when they played the Colts, they were a lot of the guys felt that they were running on fumes. They were tired, and the Colts were a little fresher.
Mm-hmm.
So when the game was tied at the end of regulation, they were sitting on the bench saying, "Oh, this is great. We'll split the money,
Yeah.
and hey, this is good."
Yeah.
Not realizing, because there had never been an
There had
overtime
never
game
been an
in a
overtime
championship
game?
or any kind of
No.
game, that they were going to play more. They're like, "What the heck? What are you talking about? We're going to play more. We're dead tired here."
Yeah.
So they that was a little bit of a surprise. Nobody knew the rules.
He really, Gifford, when he went on to his TV career, I mean, he started doing that locally in New York while he was still playing. I think he was doing sports on the probably the CBS station in New York. So I mean, he started doing that. He worked for CBS in that year. He was off doing football games. Again, I said he worked for all those years with Monday Night Football.
I was going to say, didn't there was another thing that they had said about Gifford. I think he had a description of, I want to say, Franz Klammer's downhill run at the 72 Olympics that they say is one of the classics of sports reporting. And I think I read that somewhere, and I vaguely remember that as well.
I do too, and sometimes I think Gifford was maybe so smooth, we almost took him to be vanilla, and he kind of blended into the background. Considering you'd watch his work during Monday Night Football, and he was just basically the traffic cop.
Yeah,
in the booth.
Yeah, he did a great job. Yeah, I'm thinking, Jim, as we're talking, Gifford is sort of like Joe DiMaggio in the sense that there's a whole generation who thinks of Frank Gifford as the football guy in the Monday Night Football booth, or the guy on the Wide World of Sports who did various things, and doesn't know him as a football player. The same way as people would look at Joe DiMaggio later and say, "Well, that's the Mr. Coffee guy."
That was Mr. Coffee.
And not know that he was the Yankee Clipper.
That's right. That's right. The other thing that they mentioned in this article, in 1975, he interviewed a bloody Evel Knievel after the latter crashed and broke his pelvis vertebrae and hand after jumping over 13 buses at London's Wembley Stadium on a motorcycle. Talk about a rather diverse body of work.
I think he was a guy because of what his, the really good professional guys, I'm talking about the athletes, really appreciate, I think, what other people do in other sports. So even though Evel Knievel is and was looked at as sort of almost like a sideshow, I think Frank Gifford, who had taken some knocks himself, when he saw what a guy like Evel Knievel did, he took it serious. I mean, and he gave it the gravity that he thought it deserved. And, when a guy breaks all of those things, that isn't no sideshow. That's your real body being broken. So you should take it serious. And I think Gifford had a way of putting those things in their proper perspective that was very good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And after that, he married Kathy Lee, and he was a source of material for her for all those years.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, there was a guy who did, he had a lot of stuff.
There was a reputation for, he had a reputation for other things, too.
I'm sure. I'm sure. That really sort of, that brings us back, but it's almost
kind of
like
gets us back to the Patrick Kane thing.
Yeah, because
we've come full circle.
Now, as distinguished a career as Frank Gifford had, and he deservedly so.
You're emotional over Frank Gifford?
No.
Okay.
You know what? I would say this. Obviously, his life outside of his profession was not that pristine. Yet he's looked on with great respect.
He's looked on with great respect.
Which always makes me feel, I think today's society, Jim, and I don't want to get real philosophical, but I think today's society, which has sort of took religion and the Bible and everything and sort of put it aside, is missing the big boat. Because when I see people acting like people, the Bible will tell you, there's nobody without sin.
Right.
And
Right.
so, you know what? It's like, hey, you know what? People, I see people that come down on the Patrick Kane or they'll come down on this person, that person. We're all human, and we all are
We all have our faults. Did you see? And again, talking about people being human and doing that. Did you see the Hall of Fame induction a week or so ago when Fran Tarkenton presented Mick Tingelhoff into the Hall of Fame?
I missed that.
Mick has had health problems.
I would imagine.
The memory isn't quite there. And Tarkenton presented him as to the Hall of Fame, and he brought him up there, and he said, "Mick, do you want to say anything?" And Tingelhoff went, "No, that's okay." And Tarkenton said, "Mick is a man of few words," and then began to praise him for all he did in all the years they were teammates, and broke down in tears. And it was really one of the true, genuine moments you see up there.
Well, I'm thinking as you're talking about Mick Tingelhoff, I'm thinking any guy that I can think of that played that position professionally, center, over a long period of time, that's a brutal position. I mean, you think about a Jim Otto, Mick Tingelhoff, Mike Pyle. Who
I was just going to say, Mike Pyle.
Suffering from
dementia.
Alzheimer's or dementia. The other guy who actually ate his gun was the guy from Pittsburgh, Mike Webster.
Mike Webster.
And those guys are all longtime centers in what I would consider the modern era, where
early years of the modern era.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal what they went through. I mean, brutal. It was. I mean, and those guys all with long. I mean, Otto with the knees. Webster and Pyle and Tingelhoff with their their memories and their minds.
Otto was confined to. Is he still alive? Jim Otto?
I doubt it, but
he was. I know he was confined to a wheelchair. He had that. I mean, it was. You think about it. Think about it now. It's sad when you think about the way these players have been. But when you heard him on an interview one time with, I think it was Dan McNeil and Terry Boers, when he said, "I ain't got no ACLUs left in my legs."
I ain't got no ACLUs. Okay.
But it's a brutal position. But to see the bonding and the way the emotion that Tarkenton expressed on what he meant to him.
Yeah.
And that's what sport does.
Mm-hmm. It's a great the bonding is really something.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing. So I even guys that we are skeptical about, let's say, those guys go through the same garbage as everybody else, and my hat's off to all of them. Sure. To be honest.
All right, what do we got? We got about 13 minutes left. We
13 minutes.
We haven't even talked baseball yet. Jeez.
No baseball. What's going on with those Cubs?
I don't know, man. This is. Let's see. I think Pittsburgh and the Giants both lost last night.
Yeah, I thought Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh won. Giants lost. I think Pittsburgh won. I know.
No,
the Giants
Pittsburgh
lost
four.
sure.
Pittsburgh lost 4-1.
Okay.
No, wait a minute. Wrong day. Pittsburgh won.
Yeah.
And the Giants won.
The Giants lost.
No.
Giants
what
lost.
Is this? This is
they
Tuesday.
Fell,
this is
or the
Tuesday.
Giants may not have even
What's
played.
today? What's Tuesday? Okay, Monday. I'm confused. I'm confused. Thank you, John. I know. Arizona 4, Pittsburgh 1. Giants didn't play. So the Cubs
are 4 ahead of the Giants, and they're still 2 or
they're still
3 or 2.5 back of the Pirates.
Two back of the Pirates, I think, if everything is correct here.
Yeah.
Pirates are 69 and 47. The Cubs are 67 and 49. That comes to 2 games out.
Yeah. The Cubs have, you know what I really like about Madden? I don't think strategy-wise that he's any better or worse than any other manager, but I think the big thing for a manager over 162 games is, he keeps saying, and it's the right thing to say, for these, especially for a team that's as young as the Cubs. You know what? We're still going for the division. Okay, we're still aiming at the division.
Right.
So, but we got to pass Pittsburgh
Right.
before we can talk about St. Louis. He keeps them focused on the right things in my mind.
Right.
And that is exactly what he needs to do, and he's doing it.
That's exactly what has to be done with a young ball club. He's doing it. He knows how to handle his players.
Yeah, he does.
I think the big issue is what is he going to, how is it eventually going to work with Starlin Castro? But I think Castro has reached the point where he understands he has a role to play.
Yeah.
And all he's got to do is start to try harder.
Actually, I am at the point where I was not a big Starlin Castro fan, but what he's going through right now, and this is part of why I'm impressed with professional athletes in general. Here's a guy who, can you imagine, still trying to do your job every day, but with this thought process. I was here when this thing was garbage. Okay, I went through all those years, and now that it's turning around, I look like I might be the guy who's not here for the big payoff. And to be, to me, if I was Starlin Castro, that would bother me a lot. And for now, especially now, I'm talking, as a guy who's lived most of his life. Now, this is a 25-year-old guy. As a 25-year-old guy, I don't know how I would have handled that, or if I would have handled it very well at all.
No.
So I give the guy a lot of credit.
I think the ego of anybody would have just, taken it the other way. I mean, you got a guy with a slash line of 237, average 271 on base percentage, 303 slugging. So I mean, he's, and they talk about dealing him, and there's not many places to deal him.
No, I don't think. That's the other thing. I don't really know that he's got a big market value at this point.
And you also have to look at who's behind you. Baez has played very well.
Yeah.
At Iowa. He's hitting the snot out of the ball since he came back. Alcantara is on the downside.
I don't know I haven't heard anything about what he's doing.
Yeah, not doing well. Not doing well. I looked at an article last night, and I can't remember the numbers, but I know he's not doing very well.
There's another interesting thing, though. In Alcantara, there's a guy who was...
Alcantara. Did I say Alcantara?
Whatever.
Yeah.
There's a guy who played probably at least half the season in the major league level last year. Did pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Started with the big club this year, got sent down, and now struggling in the minors. Another guy I think of that's local is Micah Johnson, who offensively did, pretty well with the Sox when he was here. Defensively wasn't what they wanted.
Right.
So he switches places with Sanchez.
Right.
And you know what? Not every person is going to take that demotion well.
No.
I mean, how about a guy like Clayton Richard now, who's a little bit older guy, but the Cubs say bye-bye to him twice.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're whispering in his ear saying, well, you know what? If everything works out, if you clear waivers or whatever, we're going to sign you back.
Yeah.
But they do that twice, and the last time he's in Indiana and is at his house, mowing his lawn, and his wife or somebody, hey, you know what? The Cubs just called. They want you back. I mean, this unless you are a superstar who's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're a professional athlete, you're living life like on the yo-yo.
Right. Think about the guy. Think about the pitcher with Toronto, Drew Hutchison. He's 12-2. He got sent to the minors.
Wow.
He got sent to the minors basically because
they picked up
Price. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons they looked at the schedule and the way things could go. Well, maybe we can go with a 4-man rotation. Mm-hmm. He's 12-2, but he's got an earned run average over 5.
Okay.
And the reason he's 12-2 is basically the run support that he's got, and every time he goes out there, the Jays are scoring a ridiculous amount of runs. It was like close to 7 runs a game.
Okay.
And I mean, you go the opposite way. There's a guy with Atlanta, and I can't think of his name. Doggone it. Got a terrible record, but has got an earned run average in the 2s.
Well, let me ask you this:
and hasn't won since like May.
As long as we're talking situations, I saw in the paper this week, Freddie Freeman, the first baseman from the Braves, went to one of their farm clubs for a rehab assignment.
Mm-hmm.
How about a guy like that? Now, obviously, he's not staying. He's only going to be there for maybe 2-3 games or whatever, a week at the most, I'd say. You're a major leaguer. Maybe they send you to the low minors because that's the closest place you could play. How do you act when you're there? What do you show those kids down there?
Right.
You know? I mean, it's obviously you're going there to rehab to get back with the major league club, but you're a major leaguer, and these are minor leaguers. You have to show them something. So how do you are you just there to participate and get your swings in, or and make a few plays in the field, or are you there? Do you want to really impart something to these guys for that short time you're there?
Give these kids something that they can remember and something that they can take forward from there. I mean, you can think about the fictional as it was. You can think about Crash Davis.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good example.
The way he acted in the movie Bull Durham.
Yeah.
When he talked about being up in the show.
Yeah.
And described it as 21 of the greatest days of my life.
There's another thing. I mean, how, you look at guys like, Sparky Anderson, who was a great manager but played 1 year and a full year with the Phillies. And never got another taste of it. Walter Alston, another great manager, one at bat.
How many games did Tony La Russa play in his major league career?
Yeah, not many.
Not many.
But you know what? My hat's off to all of those guys. You have to handle that, and you have to handle it so that as you go beyond that point, you do something with your life. You do something with your career.
Tommy Lasorda.
Yeah, another guy
was a terrible pitcher in his career.
Yeah, he didn't have a successful career as a pitcher.
But there's a guy who had an incredible run as a manager.
Yeah.
By the way, just since we mentioned 2 names in Dodger history, Lasorda and Alston, I saw that Vin Scully's not sure if he's going to come back next year for his 67th season.
How old is Vin Scully?
87.
Wow, so he started at 20?
He started at 20.
Wow. Now there's a good broadcaster.
Oh man.
Hall of Fame guy.
There's a guy who's so smooth with what he does. And he said the other night that he had a cold the other night. And he asked that I think it was something, normally part of his broadcast is simulcast. And it was he does like 3 innings that's on radio and TV. And he said he did not want the TV simulcast that night because of the way he felt, because he said he didn't want anybody to hear him not sounding his best.
Okay. It's interesting, Jim. I ran into, talking about 80-year-olds, ran into Tom Siska, who he preceded me as president of NYA Little League Football back in the 70s. And saw him at the library, and Tom is looking good. He's 81 years old. He's in, good firm handshake. He looks good. And we're talking, and he says, Rich, he says, I'm 81. I have to enjoy every day. And I'm thinking, you know what? If I get to the point where I'm in my 80s, if I make it that far, that's the outlook you really have to take. Every day is sort of like a bonus.
It really is. Every day is a bonus. And I think, there was something a few months back when David Letterman left the air, and they were talking, there were different postings every day about interviews and different things with that. Well, he had somebody, I think the whole show was there, but I think I saw part of the clip when Warren Zevon
Warren Zevon, the musician.
Right, was on with him. And Warren Zevon was a great friend of the show. I think he'd been on many, many times. He filled in for Paul Schaefer for what it was conducted when Schaefer couldn't do it. But at that point, Zevon was dying from cancer, and it was terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like he came there to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
But they spent the whole show. Zevon did some of his songs, but he made a comment about how, Letterman asked him, he said, how are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with this? And he said that, he said you have to enjoy every moment. In fact, he used a term that I thought was really good. Enjoy every sandwich.
Yeah. That's a good. I like that. Yeah.
Isn't that a great term?
It is. Hey, you know what, Jim? I know you're talking about something, but when you said Warren Zevon, there's a song he does that I really like, and I can't think of what
Werewolves
it is.
of London.
Werewolves of London. Okay, there you go.
I bet you that was the one you were thinking of.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, enjoy every sandwich, and I think that's a good idea.
That's a really good idea.
I think that's our philosophy from now on, right, John? We're going to enjoy every sandwich.
Oh, enjoy every sandwich.
No, sandwich then.
Sandwich.
Well, depending on the neighborhood. Sometimes it's just a sandwich.
Sandwich.
Yeah.
Enjoy every sandwich.
That's right.
Hey,
right.
You know what? I thought that 13 minutes went super fast.
I know.
Holy moly.
I know. Time for us to get out of here.
Yes.
We thank the Doctor of the Dials for letting us come over and create havoc, as always. We thank you for listening.
What a great man he is. Too.
He's a hell of a guy.
He is.
He's a hell of a guy. Our guy John. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with some more nonsense in a couple of weeks, and we are going to be out of here. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, August the 19th, the year of our Lord 2015 on Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and thanks to our station manager, Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, August the 18th, the year of our Lord, 2015. Until next time, please be safe, and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for listening.